Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to pretend that we just saw a video there. I'll edit it into the recording, I guess. Okay. Hello, good evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on what part of the world you're joining us from. I'm Angela McCrae, board member of the Cosmobiology Institute, and it is an honor to welcome you to today's event, Exploring Evidence-Based Research. I would like to begin by reading the mission statement of our organization. The Cosmobiology Institute is dedicated to the empirical verification of relationships between cosmic phenomena with organic life, and to the practical application of these observations and discoveries. The Cosmobiology Institute is dedicated to the application of scientific methods to determine the nature of things, regardless of whether those discoveries may be comfortable or uncomfortable for some people to accept. As a nonprofit organization dedicated to furthering scientific understanding and developing applications that improve the lives of people, the Cosmobiology Institute provides a range of services that are free or involve minimal cost, as well as services that can be further developed by private businesses and governmental agencies without intellectual property constraints. Open source software, training programs, and publications are some of the forms in which the Cosmobiology Institute provides or will provide these services. I encourage you all to go to cosmobiology.org to view more information about our organization. This evening, we welcome back Santino Mancuso and our board president, Michele Love. Santino will be discussing the meaning of evidence-based research, where it came from, and why it is so important to our organization. As examples of evidence-based research and practice, Michele has a truly riveting presentation planned for you. She has done some amazing research into eating disorders that she will be sharing with us, along with her new discoveries on the interpretation of Black Moon Lilith. We have planned an hour and a half for this evening, but we will have time at the end for any questions. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat during the presentations, and we will do our best to get them all answered. At the end of Michele's presentation, if you have a question that you would like to ask verbally, please use the raise your hand button icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen so that we can get to your question efficiently and unmute your microphone. For those of you here that may speak a different native language, we greatly appreciate your participation. And at the end of the meeting, when you leave the presentation, a quick survey will appear. We do have that survey available at this time in several languages and would love your input and questions. They will be answered as soon as we can respond to them. First, I would like to welcome Santino Mancuso. He is also a founder and board member of the Cosmobiology Institute. Welcome, Santino. I think you're muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Whoops, I was muted. Okay. Yeah. I was talking to myself.
Welcome. That's okay.
I talk to myself a lot, so nothing new there. Okay, where is my presentation? I'm going to talk for only about 10 minutes. Most of this evening, you're going to be sharing with Michele, with her research, but I want to talk about evidence-based practice a little bit. I don't know why. Where is my screen gone? This is so weird.
It always happens right before your...
Yeah, oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Okay, so you see my opening slide. I'm going to talk about evidence-based practice because it's very relevant to the mission of the Cosmobiology Institute. And basically, this whole EBP, evidence-based practice movement, it's a modern movement that's revolutionizing psychology and medicine. Until I took a particular course, and when I was in graduate school on evidence-based practice, I didn't realize even what was going on. And I want to just for 10 minutes share a little bit of this because it really is helpful for understanding how we can most effectively do research in astrology. And because let me just quote from the website, Angela just quoted a lot of it as well. The Cosmobiology Institute is dedicated to the empirical verification of relationships between cosmic phenomena with organic life. That's our mission. It's not so much philosophical or whatever, or historical. Those are wonderful areas, but it's not the mission of the Institute. The Institute is to see, are there actual real relationships between what we call astrology and organic life? And if those discoveries are made, they can be applied in practical ways. Sounds very straightforward, sounds very simple, right? Okay, we're going to do research. However, we can learn some valuable lessons from what has happened in other disciplines. Astrology is not the first discipline that decided to become more evidence-based. Preceding astrology was medicine and psychology and education. I want to share a little bit about this evidence-based movement and 5 things that we can learn from it, since these people have just gone before us. 5 little things that we can learn for our pursuit of an evidence-based practice in astrology. Lesson 1 out of these 5 lessons. Being evidence-based is new. It's not just a word for scientific research, which has been going on for a long time. It's actually a relatively new idea. The term began with medicine. That was the first use of the term, evidence-based. EBM, evidence-based medicine. I was kind of stunned when I learned when this started. 1991. It's about 30 years ago, it was introduced by a fellow named Gordon Guyot. To shift, now listen to this, it sounds just like astrology to me. To shift the emphasis in clinical decision making means in astrology, you're giving consultations to people, right? To change it from intuition, unsystematic clinical experience, and pathophysiologic rationale, which just means using logic. Until 1991, medical practitioners, including doctors, according to a lot of people who research this, were not using evidence very much. They learn the evidence in college, but then when they sit down with a client, they use their intuition and unsystematic clinical experience. Same thing we do in astrology. We just use whatever works for us. It works for me, fine. Doctors were not so different. In 1996, this movement started to build a little bit. A fellow named D.L. Sackett, a Canadian-American doctor, founder of the first department of clinical epidemiology at blah, blah, blah in Ontario, explained that evidence-based clinical decision-making is a combination of not only research evidence, but also clinical expertise. So in other words, people do research, they collect a bunch of people who have a disease or whatever, they analyze the data, and then they say, okay, now we have real data, let's use that with our clients. But first, you have to see what happens when you use it in a real life situation. So you combine what you get from the researchers with what the practitioners experience when they apply it. That idea was introduced in 1996. The importance of seeing what happens with the research with clients. All this stuff sort of shocked me. This is what's happening in the 1990s. Lesson number 2 is what I just emphasized. So lesson number 1, let me go back to lesson number 1, is that this is new. This started in the 1990s, really started taking off in the 2000s. Evidence-based education, psychology, many, many fields. And what we're suggesting at the Cosmobiology Institute is let's do this in astrology as well. Lesson number 2 is we can't just take the results of research and say, oh, we found this research, this works, that's it. We have to see what happens in the real world when people apply the ideas. So this is the basic principle. If you go to the website of the American Psychological Association, big information about how they're evidence-based with the same emphasis. We do research, we apply it, we see what happens. That's what evidence-based means. So we're learning from the people that just went before us, medicine and in this case, fields like psychology as well. Third lesson out of 5 lessons is that evidence-based is not a miracle. It's not a panacea. It doesn't solve all your problems. It's the best we have, but it doesn't solve all your problems. People can use an evidence-based practice to be corrupt. It can introduce corruption. And that's what has happened in medicine. And what is happening, it is happening in medicine, not in the past, it's happening right now, a tremendous amount of corruption. And the corruption is not identified just by, conspiracy theorists and weirdos. It's a concern in the mainstream of medicine. So for example, here's a quote from an academic article, funded by the NIH, major funding organization, in a very respectable journal, and they're investigating what's going on in medicine. Listen to this. There's corruption going on. Over the past 35 years, patients have suffered from a largely hidden epidemic of side effects from drugs that usually have few offsetting benefits. In other words, you take a drug, you get these side effects, and they're terrible. The pharmaceutical industry has corrupted the practice of medicine through its influence over what drugs are developed, how they are tested, and how medical knowledge is created. It's corrupt. It does not follow the rules of an evidence-based practice. There are strict rules. So this is another lesson that just because you have good rules doesn't mean people obey them. The pharmaceutical industry and other people are corrupt because they want to make money, evidently, rather than follow the strict rules for evidence. So these are things to be aware of that the people who just went before us in other disciplines have experienced. I suspect we won't have a lot of problems with corruption of that kind in astrology, but it could happen. Lesson 4. Another thing that was learned, this was learned in education when they started becoming evidence-based, was that a wide range of research methods is helpful. And sometimes qualitative methods can be more helpful than quantitative methods. Quantitative methods have the reputation of being, the best, especially a strict hypothesis test. But to build your confidence, depending on how much you know, where you're at with understanding, many different research methods can help. The people in education learned this the hard way. They wasted millions of dollars that they could have used more efficiently if they understood that they shouldn't limit their research methods. This is Daniel Stufflebeam was one of the leaders. He was a academic in statistics and psychology, and he was using the strict scientific style research, and it didn't work. And he found out that they needed to use softer methods, more flexible methods, more exploratory research before using the hard numbers quantitative approach. After they had spent all this time and money, they realized these methods are not the best. So I'm going to quote this from Stufflebeam and Zhang's book. In the 1960s, US president, so this actually started before evidence-based medicine. We started to get the feeling, they didn't call it evidence-based, but trying to understand what teaching methods work best. So let me read this. In the 1960s, in the USA, President Lyndon B. Johnson authorized research to determine what educational methods work best. So Johnson said, let's find out what methods are best. I mean, it makes sense. These projects were being conducted in about 26,000 school districts in a nationwide approach to combat poverty and improve the public schools. The U.S. Congress required every funded school district to evaluate its federally supported projects. I've got a lot of typos here. The evaluation technology in the 1960s was mainly limited to controlled, variable, manipulating, randomized comparative experiments. Attempts to apply these approaches to evaluation proved to be unsatisfying and counterproductive. The point here is we have to be open and flexible and interested in a wide range of research methods that different ones work better in different situations. Last lesson from evidence-based practices I want to share is it helps to have clear criteria for confidence. What does evidence-based mean? This is what it means in medicine. There's a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, this is the one used in medicine today. Background information, expert opinion. You got to start somewhere. So some doctor who's been practicing for 25 years says, oh, I do this and it works. This is my expert opinion. You check it out. It's the lowest level. It gives almost no confidence. So when a doctor says, oh, this really works, we don't really care. It's just a foundation to find out. And then you begin the research methods. There's three main kinds of research methods in medicine: case-controlled studies, cohort studies, and randomized control trials. Randomized control trials give the most confidence. So they're up in the higher in the research. Some research designs give more confidence than others, but they may not be appropriate in certain situations. So they have different designs. And then people come in and they look at the results from the research and critically assess them and compare them. And that gives the highest confidence. Critically appraised individual articles, critically appraised topics, and then systematic reviews is at the top of the pyramid. Now, there's a lot of corruption going on, but when done properly, this is how we determine, should you take vitamin C for a cold? Should you take the COVID vaccine? Should you do these things? There are strict rules for evaluating what gives us the most confidence. And this is just an overview. And here's a proposed pyramid for evidence that I made for astrology. Again, we have ideas passed down, personal experience, expert opinion at the bottom. And then I've created ideas for different kinds of studies that give increasingly higher confidence. So logically inferred, I'm not going to go through all this, but I just want you to, I don't want to get lost in the trees and lose sight of the forest. The main conceptual idea I want to share with you is that we're on a mission to find out if astrology really works. Does it work outside of the experience of the astrologer as a form of divination or psychic insight? Do these rules actually work independent of the astrologer? Is there something actually working or not? And the battle for that kind of understanding has been happening in other practices. And what they decided is that psychology is not a science and medicine is not a science, because they don't have the extreme confidence that you have in aeronautical engineering, and they can send a rocket, to the moon and beyond. It's too fuzzy, it's too complicated. So they said, we don't know what to do when you have a cold or the flu or whatever. So we'll just use the best evidence. And then they have a pyramid for deciding what best evidence is. So you follow the rules of the evidence-based practice. And the revolution has been very strong because it's working. Other than problems like corruption, what they're finding in psychology is that reports from people that go to therapists are increasingly positive. It's working. Using an evidence-based practice, people are using methods that actually work rather than whatever they think works. Anyway, I want to share that. I think it's interesting, isn't it? That this is a recent phenomenon in the last 30 years, that figuring out how do we determine what psychological methods or what a therapist should do. And they've developed rules and it works. So we're attempting to do the same thing in astrology. Anyway, I wanted to give you that background. And that's it. Angela's going to introduce Michele. And now we have the real fun of somebody going in and doing research and finding something. And it's working. I mean, I'm so excited. Does astrology actually really work? The evidence is mounting every day that yes, it actually does. And it's not a philosophical question. It's not something to debate. Well, I think you have to look at the data. The data is impressive. And Michele's going to show you the hard work to even build from the ground up a model that might work. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Santino. I think the Cosmobiology Institute is founded on this concept of evidence-based research and evidence-based practice. And so I know that we're going to hear this more probably in every presentation we have. There will be references to this. So it's important that we all understand at a pretty deep level what this actually means and how important it is to us and to the practice that we do. So I am honored to introduce Michele Love. Michele has a Bachelor of Science degree from SUNY Oswego and has been a lifelong advocate and champion for adult education at all levels of public and private institutions, including the United States Department of the Army. She has since dedicated herself to volunteering with combat veterans, palliative care patients and their families while offering solace and support within her community. Michele's 18-year journey as an entrepreneur led her to her current work with evidence-based astrology. Michele, I have heard your presentation on eating disorders before. I know you're going to talk about that after your initial topic. I will say it's fascinating. Michele presented this, I believe, for the first time at the Vibrational Astrology Conference in 2023. Truly fascinating research. So welcome. I can't wait to hear about your discoveries.
Thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you all here again with us this evening. And on behalf of the Cosmobiology Institute, we just couldn't thank you enough for sharing with us. Angela just introduced me, so we don't need to go over that again. But I'm here this evening to take you on a journey, and we're going to go on a journey through the cosmos. I'm also going to bring everyone through the journey of building a model for evidence-based research. And my goal and my hope in this was so that this could be for anyone at any step or any level of research, whether you have not done a research project before and you're nervous to get started. I want you all to know that we are here to support you. And for those of you who are in the midst of research or have already conducted, I want to commend you on your tremendous hard work and your efforts, because this brings us to the goal of the Cosmobiology Institute, which is to further our discoveries. So I'm going to share a little bit of the rigors of evidence-based research. And Santino just so eloquently described to us, like, why does it matter? Why does evidence-based research matter? And why do we do it? And this is largely, number one, I feel anyway, to improve astrology and our understanding of it. It's not to necessarily disprove a method or disprove information that has already been out there, but to improve what it is that we do know and to take this one step further. Also, innovation, obviously, and that continues to foster a culture of continuous learning, which is what we're here for, and by encouraging the exploration of new ideas and evidence-based approaches. So, super cool for Pluto moving into Aquarius right now, right? Innovation, here we are. So our adventure this evening is going to reveal the following. I'm going to share with you how I built the model and then also some evidence that I have found. So first and foremost, I'm going to share the foundational and the theoretical framework for constructing a model and the utilization of extreme case sampling in evidence-based practice. I'll also show some evidence on a mixed method approach, which combines both quantitative and qualitative research, and then also certainly the practical application of exploratory research. And we'll start with that model first. The research models that I'm going to present to you cover the following topics. This is my current research that is underway, and this is employing extreme case sampling. And I'm working on this project to reveal the essential energy process of Black Moon Lilith. So as I continue to share some of the things that I do have, I do want to put up a little disclaimer first and foremost. in that this research is not yet complete. However, my findings and what it is that I have so far may make me very unpopular amongst the astrology community at this point in time, because I'm finding some very interesting and very different understandings of Black Moon Lilith. We'll be talking about her, and in addition to research that I have completed, and that was exploratory research on eating disorders. So a little word of caution. I already gave my little disclaimer on how I may be a bit unpopular as it relates to Black Moon Lilith. But engaging in evidence-based research, it's not for the timid. It can be an emotional roller coaster. I think we've all experienced that. This comes with extreme highs, extreme lows, but it's also one of the most exhilarating experiences that you may ever encounter. It is really no joke when I say I almost became an absolute raving lunatic during my eating disorder research. You know, like you're on this roller coaster ride, and the thrill, it's like you're at the peak, you're at the top of the summit, and you think you found something, and then, you know, the floor is removed from beneath you and you start all over again. But it really truly does demand some immense resilience, many, many hours of hard work, determination, and many sleepless nights. I think Santino had to hear me talk often as well about how I would literally be woken up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and have to get right back in front of my computer to get back to my research because it's just in the brain. So let's begin with the simpler model of the two, and that is the extreme case sampling of Black Moon Lilith. So as we already know, extreme case sampling, it's a qualitative technique that focuses on choosing cases deemed outliers or exceptions to the norm. So when I ran this research, I was looking for people that had super strong Black Moon Lilith in their charts. And what I mean by that is having Black Moon Lilith conjunct another planet with a very tiny orb. These selected cases can represent either exceptionally positive or exceptionally negative instances of a particular phenomenon, and I will describe more of that as we move along. But why do we use extreme case sampling? So extreme case sampling, it removes a selection bias. In other words, I had no control whatsoever over what charts I analyzed. And that is because if the researcher picks the charts, then the research is not able to give us confidence that we found anything according to modern research methods theory. These cases that I chose were not cherry-picked. I did not choose family, friends. I let the data show itself. Extreme case sampling is used in genetics research to make discoveries, and Santino just spoke a little bit about that. And there are some technical requirements for using extreme case sampling, which I won't go into here. But Santino has corresponded with the authors of academic papers in his genetics research, and they confirmed that the use of extreme case sampling in his astrological research is an excellent research design. Extreme case sampling can be one step in a series of studies, and later studies can be, for example, a strict hypothesis test, where the findings from the extreme case sampling study are used to test a specific hypothesis. And we'll get into that as well. So where do we begin? So all research begins with an open-ended, a simple question in your mind, and obviously a very open mind as well. So my question was, what is the true fundamental energy process of true Black Moon Lilith? So in my research here, I am using the true, as I have just stated, not the mean. So the true Black Moon Lilith. Step number 1, I created an astro signature. And this is where I let the research data show itself. And as stated before, I'm researching that true Black Moon Lilith conjunct each planet. So I ran data for Black Moon Lilith conjunct the sun, conjunct the moon, conjunct Mercury, all of the planets, all the way Sun through Pluto. with less than a 15-minute orb. So this is a super tight conjunction here. And I used Sirius 4.0 to collect my data. So here you will see the astro signature that I created for Black Moon Lilith. And this is just Black Moon Lilith conjunct Venus. This was chosen at random. There is no particular reason why I am sharing this piece or portion of the research, other than this was kind of luck of the draw, and case number one was pretty interesting to me. So this is Sirius 4.0. You can see where I created the astro signature. And this is where we have to absolutely love modern technology and research techniques. And the results listed below were generated for Black Moon Lilith conjunct the planet Venus. So here's the listing that Sirius spit out for me. This list was absolutely, I mean, it was quite lengthy. And I specified to show people with AA data or better. So AA data meaning exact time of birth listed on a birth certificate. So I began researching the top 15 cases that were listed above, and I was hoping to find a repetitive theme through their biographies and great works. So after this list was generated, what I did was I actually started researching in detail every person that was listed here. Obviously, I started with case number one. I will share here, you want to expand your research, go beyond Wikipedia, or just kind of, simple things that are written. You really want to dig deep in this. But the first and the top 5 cases of Black Moon Lilith conjunct Venus, it brought me to number 1, Terence McKenna. He has Black Moon Lilith conjunct Venus with a 1-minute orb. Jean Bordes, also a 1-minute orb. Lindsay Crosby, who was the son of Bing Crosby, and he was a 4-minute orb. Clement Rabora and Emilio Fernandez. So as you can see, tiny orbs here. In the research as well, this is just a little tip for any of those of you going forward in research. We often have lists of writers, poets, artists, scientists, etc., but they tend to hold a lot of secrets to their energy process within their writing styles or their works. So this is where I would perhaps suggest moving past just, Wikipedia articles or simple biographies. If you actually listen to a musician's music and the type of music that they write, or read the poet's poetry, you will find cues and clues there, but really leave no stone left unturned. Be thorough. Comprehensive notes are essential for achieving success. I'm not going to show you my notes because I literally have piles and piles and piles. I'm a lunatic about notes. But I developed a spreadsheet mapping each conjunction of Black Moon Lilith to every single planet. And when you do this, you'll actually start to notice patterns emerge. And the patterns in the study include specific objects, for me anyways, symbols, and even recurring elements and behaviors. When you begin to see the pattern, I will say this, you can't unsee it. Once you begin to see it, you can't unsee it, although we're not going to allow that to drive the research, but it is there. I'm going to show you just a quick little example of Terence McKenna and his Black Moon Lilith conjunct Venus with a 1-minute orb. He's an interesting gentleman. I don't know if anyone's familiar with him, but I'm going to share a little bit of his information here. This is his natal chart. Terence McKenna was a visionary ethnobotanist, philosopher, and influential figure known for his exploration of consciousness, psychedelic plants, and the history of human evolution. So here we can see in his birth chart, Terence McKenna has this 1-minute orb here with Venus conjunct Black Moon Lilith. At this point in time, I'll also share, you may see over on the right side of the screen, it was starting to made sense to me halfway through my research to not only research Black Moon Lilith, but to research the Priapus as well. So that this is going to be an additional layer that comes in, because I'm really curious about that. Terrence McKenna,
it's funny, same birth date than me.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Hey,
Excuse
Michele,
me.
I
Yes.
want to interrupt real quick. There are a few
Excuse me.
times when your presentation is dropping like the audio in and out. I don't think it's anything you can control. So hopefully the recording will be clearer. I'm just mentioning that for people on.
Okay.
But what you just said, I think, was very important, and that was a little cut off. So what did you end up comparing Black Moon Lilith to, or noticing also at the same time?
So I was noticing that it may be incredibly important to research the Priapus as well.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
So the Priapus is the opposite point of Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is the apogee, and then we have the perigee. But Terrence McKenna believed that humanity is on the brink of a new era of spiritual and technological awakening, similar to ancient shamanic traditions. And I found that incredibly intriguing. That's just a little snippet on him. We'll talk more. Case number 2, interesting as well. Black Moon Lilith conjunct Mars this time with a 2-minute orb. And this is George Clooney. We're all familiar with George Clooney, or most of us probably are. George Clooney is a prominent figure in Hollywood, known not only for his acting and directing talents, but also for his extensive humanitarian work. He has been actively involved in various charitable causes and initiatives, using his platform to raise awareness and drive positive change. So here we see his Black Moon Lilith conjunct Mars with the 2-minute orb, and his Priapus is over here at 0 Aquarius. One of his charitable foundations is called the Foundation for Justice. Clooney and his wife, Amal Clooney, founded this organization in 2016 to address human rights abuses globally. The foundation provides legal aid to victims, investigates atrocities, and advocates for justice. So although this research is still in progress, I truly feel that I have found an underlying theme. I believe Black Moon Lilith to be about the collective unconscious, and transcendence of the self. The collective unconscious was a concept that was introduced by Carl Jung, and it refers to a shared pool of unconscious thoughts, memories, and experiences that are inherited from our ancestors. It's like a vast ocean of knowledge and wisdom, and it's accessible to everyone, but often hidden beneath the surface of our conscious minds. It involves reaching a higher state of being, consciousness, and understanding in the inherent knowing that we are all one and interconnected. This concept has been explored in various philosophical, religious, and spiritual traditions throughout history. And connecting to something greater than ourselves can be interpreted in various ways. Some people find it through religion or spirituality, others through nature or art, and still others through human connection and shared experiences. I am not finding Black Moon Lilith to be this wildly frenetic energy that we always hear about. There's a repetitive pattern that I am finding in my research that she's very humanitarian and spiritual in her connectedness to our unique and individual divine essence. So this is where I state that I may be unpopular in my thought or my research on Black Moon Lilith. And just, you know, we often hear of her of being this wildly frenetic thing, and it's just not, it doesn't show anywhere. So like I said, she continues to be a work in progress, so stay tuned on this research. As I stated, I find her extremely humanitarian. Her energy wants to connect out I will also state that I find a repetitive theme in the interconnectedness. As human beings, we all want to be in relationship. We're connected within ourselves to our spirituality and also into the external world. But Lilith's energy will either push her way out into helping all of humanity, or she will connect to the divine by pulling her energy inward. So it's either this very introverted or this very extroverted energy that comes through, and in the process in which she does that. As I'm doing this research, I am also recording houses, zodiac signs. I'm not finding where they are separating out just yet, but I hope that maybe that will change, and it may not. As we know in research, we just have to have an open mind and let the research unfold and reveal itself without directing it. But stay tuned for Black Moon Lilith as I continue to work on her.
Michele, real quick, what's your next step with Black Moon Lilith? Like, where would you, because this research was based on the conjunction with Venus, correct?
Yes.
So
Well, I've done each planet.
Okay. And okay, well, I guess that answers my question then. I think if you could define a little bit more about the opposite point for Black Moon Lilith, that was kind of coming up for people needing a little more clarity of what
Sure.
what you have found that to mean.
Okay, so the Priapus is the opposite point of Black Moon Lilith, and as we know, these are not objects; these are points in the sky.
Right.
The Priapus, obviously, we know that to be more of the divine masculine energy, I will call it. I feel, and like I said, this research is not complete, but what I'm beginning to see emerge with the Priapus, it's almost like the divine feminine and the divine masculine coming together to procreate and create some new force of life energy. But I feel that the Priapus is kind of like, how is the energy being fertilized almost, which makes sense if we think about the what that is all about and the creation, and also in the flavor in which this person acts out their Lilith energy.
Okay.
So
And
it's been,
you haven't found that it's related to zodiac signs or houses as of
I
yet?
have not.
Okay.
I have
Interesting.
not at this point in time. But yes, I've done each planet, Sun through
Right.
Pluto, conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And I thought maybe that those would even separate out, but there's a repetitive theme that goes through each planet's conjunction to her.
Got it. What about the angles? Have you worked with ascendant midheaven?
I have not worked with those yet.
Okay.
That will be another step that comes through when I really get super comfortable and nail down her energy process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So model number 2, this is a little bit more involved, and this is the model that I built on eating disorders. So this has a mixed methods approach, and this was exploratory research that I conducted. And it's a more complex approach throughout the process of exploratory research. So my first step in this research was to really deepen my understanding of the disease. I will share and state upfront, this topic was chosen at random. I did not go searching for this, or to be quite honest, wasn't even something that I was considering. It just kind of happened this way. And then there was more that evolved from there. But to deepen my understanding of the disease, obviously, I read peer-reviewed articles in psychology. I watched TED Talks. I watched videos. Anything that I could get my hands on, just so that I could get to the deeper knowledge and understanding of what the contributing factors were to the disease. And that allowed me to establish a framework for the variables in my research. So obviously, it became very evident through that portion of the research that the subject matter involved a deeply emotional illness. So when we think about emotions and an emotional illness, obviously that prompted me to think about the moon. Also of the feminine, the female, not that only females struggle with eating disorders. I actually had several men that were listed in my cases as well. But that observation prompted me to hypothesize that the moon might be a central focal point in this disease. And since this research was assumptionless, I kept an open mind to every possibility and I just let the data reveal. And it certainly did. Step number 2, we always want to develop a clear question or hypothesis. So you want to clearly outline your specific question or issue you aim to tackle. So my question here was, I wanted to know if there were vibrational or harmonic factors related to the moon and the astro signature that I created for eating disorders. And if so, which harmonics were at play or which vibrations? So the third step here is to search for the evidence. So you want to use reliable databases to identify relevant research studies. Once again, I use Sirius version 4.0. Quite honestly, I'm unfamiliar with SolarFlyer or other databases. I don't know if they have this type of detailed information in them, but this is just to say that I didn't choose the data. It was not cherry picked here. So I gathered the data from Series 4.0. And once again, I selected charts that had AA or AA data. And that produced a sample size of 74 subjects. So 74 subjects were researched in fine detail. And then I used the exploratory research feature right in Series 4.0. I took the group of saved charts, all 74 of eating disorder subjects, and I carefully studied each planetary pair to formulate my astro signature. So once again, this is like multiple layers of research in the work. This just briefly shows what is available in Series 4.0. You will see here at the top, I created a category for my eating disorder cases. This category had the 74 subjects listed here. To the right, you see first planet, second planet. I went through each planetary combination and pair to gather the data for me. So with meticulous and thorough note-taking, I examined each pair, Sun through Pluto, once again, within harmonic charts. So I'm going from, natal all the way to 180 and beyond. Of course, you can include any additional variables that you want to research if it's not planet to planet, if you want to research the nodes, if you want to research asteroids, that is all there as well. So an elegant and precise graph was formulated, and this displayed the differences between the charts being researched and the distribution of the astrological influence over the time period the chart was analyzed. So we have this, this beautiful graph here, and you can see in the graph where the distribution moves up or dips down below. And once again, this is the power and beauty of modern technology. We hit the button and it collects everything here for us. So in that, I observed a pattern that emerged in my research, and that involved planetary variables. I was super diligent in recording my findings. This level of meticulous documentation is essential. I cannot stress that enough. Little disclaimer here as well. Certainly, I'm sure everyone already knows this, but back up your work. Always. My C drive failed in the middle of my research.
Oh, no.
Computer crash, but thankfully I had things saved. This is just a brief copy of my crazy note-taking that you are seeing once again. Planetary pairs that I was recording, vibrations, seeing if there was a pattern that emerged here. So you can see at the top, I even have, like, what do these vibrations mean? 7 vibe, 8 vibe, 11 vibe, 13, before I ran off a test. The important planetary patterns patterns observed through vibrational aspects, this aided me in developing my theory. So the pattern did emerge. And after that, I developed a formula for the astro signature based on these discoveries. Remember that simplicity in formulas leads to elegance. If you keep it simple, keep it simple. So I kept it simple initially, finding 3 planetary pattern pairs of 3 and a particular vibration. The astro signature for each vibrational pattern, it's a linear regression model, and it utilized a 16-degree orb with an assigned weight of 10. And then the score provided a clear indication of how closely the orb aligned within the astrological variable. So this enabled us to rank the 74 subjects, 74 eating disorder subjects, their cases by strength. So I assigned them a weight, based on the planetary pairs that showed up in the exploratory portion of the research. So here you can see again, these are the top 3 cases of my test subjects. We have Catherine Oxenberg, number 1, Mario Lanza, number 2, and Princess Di was number 3. So here we can see also, for example, Catherine Oxenberg, she was assigned 174 points. That was the weight that was used. And you can actually even see the harmonics and the patterns listed above, which vibration and how tiny the orb is there. So that's how the ranking was created. So although the previous listing only highlights the top 3, I conducted thorough research on the top 15 out of those 74. So this included delving into their biographical life stories, their experiences, everything in great detail to illuminate my theoretical framework. I dedicated countless hours to this effort, digging deep into each case. So I actually went beyond the 15. I'll be quite honest and say I didn't research in detail all 74 people, but I did look at all 74 just to various lengths, but those top 15 were every I dotted and every T crossed. Once I finished with that, I created a shuffled control group, and this is very important. And we created that shuffled group to compare against the original 74 charts. So we shuffled the control group 1,000 times. And this produced scores for the shuffled control group, which were saved to file. So shuffling is important. And this allowed me to conduct a statistical t-test to assess the alignment of the astro signature with my data. And the outcome is going to reveal the effectiveness of our model here. So as we may know, in statistics, a p-value below 0.05 is considered statistically significant. Naturally, we want to aim for even more impressive results like 0.001 or better to truly excite us, which I actually did. And this is where I had to cultivate a great deal of patience and resist letting the data dictate my research. This was a big piece of the emotional roller coaster ride because you see that p-value go, you just want to take off with it. And you really can't do that. Once again, just allow the research to reveal itself. Don't let that data drive you. So I had actually created several astro signatures, which we saw earlier. I did Sun through Pluto, all of the combinations, all of the patterns, all of the vibrations. And then I put all of those astro signatures to the statistical test. And here's where key factors evolved and produced some really remarkable results, which I'm excited to share with you. So after that, I filtered out vibrations and planetary configurations that did not theoretically make sense. So there was a lot of, Venus-Jupiter that showed up, or Venus-Uranus that would show up, and a particular vibration that made no sense as it related to eating disorders. So you have to, think about theory and what it is that is practical. And that's where I got a simpler formula that emerged. And are my results. So eating disorders had a high 23 vibration, 23 vibe. in harmonic charts. So the 23 vibe is about risk assessment. It gambles, it wants to roll the dice, making decisions that others would typically avoid based upon their own perception. So that 23 vibe, it takes a calculated risk, and it always asks the question, like, what do I do now? So eating disorders were high 23 vibe. And they included moon aspects, which is something that I suspected, as I spoke of earlier. That was in my original, questioning, being an emotional disease. So moon aspects in 23 vibe are the primary indicator of vulnerability. So just because these planetary patterns or configurations appear in the 23 vibe chart of someone that you are consulting, it does not mean that they are going to have an eating disorder, but it is an indicator that they may be vulnerable or have a natural propensity for this. And I looked at these vibrations in multiples. So it's came down to vibes 23, 46, 69, and 92. And those were Moon Pluto aspects that continue to show and reveal themselves. And then I also had Moon Vesta that showed up in eating disorders as well, with those same vibrational sequence, 23, 46, 69, and 92. 8 vibration, which is our driving force. This also showed up in eating disorders. And in theory, that makes sense as well, because those with eating disorders, it's obsessive. They have this obsessive drive to achieve their goal. And it was Mars-Pluto that continued to show in 8 vibrations here. And this was fueled by obsessive thoughts and ideas, Mercury-Pluto. The 8 vibe is fundamental in our basic driving force in life. So Mercury in the mind, Pluto, obsessive and compulsive, Mars wanting to take action. Theoretically makes sense. So here we have Pluto showing once again. Pluto aspects in 8 vibration, although this was the weaker indicator or the weaker leg of the final astro signature in eating disorders, but it certainly was there. Mercury-Pluto aspects and vibrations 8, 16, 32, and 64. And then we had Mars-Pluto vibrations 8, 16, 32, and 64 as well. So here you can see, once again, it's like this very elegant model. We have these 2 different combinations, but they both share a planet. The 23 vibe was Moon, remember Moon, Pluto, and Vesta. So we have Pluto involved in these 2 vibrations. Eating disorders are highly emotional and obsessive compulsive. Eating disorders are plutonic. These were the p-values that produced from this astro signature, and you can see the remarkable results that we had here. The Moon Vesta portion of the 23 vibe produced a p-value of 0.01. Moon Pluto in the 23 vibe, 0.02. And then the 8 vibration, Mercury Pluto and Mars Pluto, they actually didn't show as being statistically significant on their own. But when you combine all 4 aspects, it drove the value up. So these were included as well. So Moon Vesta and Moon Pluto produced a p-value of 0.0002. This is phenomenal. The Mercury Pluto and Mars Pluto in the 8 vibe was 0.02, and the final astro signature created a result of 0.005. The Moon Vesta and the Moon Pluto portion had a larger effect size, as stated before, on that astro signature than the 8 vibe did. So this produced remarkable results, absolute success. There was another layer to this research as well. I was finding 31 vibe was also significant, and I did add it in to the 8 vibe and 23 vibe. It drove the value down a bit, although it was still statistically significant. At this point, I was presenting this research for the Vibrational Astrology Conference, and quite honestly, I ran out of time to look at that 31 vibe, but I do believe it to be another layer or another level and component in eating disorders. And that 31 vibration, that included the North Node, Ceres, and Neptune. So that's another layer for this research as well. I believe that this research has many layers. I think all research has many layers. We can always kick it up another notch, take it another step, another level. But today I showcase the primary, highly simplified formula that produced some really fantastic results on those eating disorders. So as we know, this evidence-based research is an absolute labor of love. And the important thing is not to stop questioning. As Einstein says, curiosity has its own reason for existing, and that's why we're here. And by maintaining a curious and inquisitive mind, it's fundamental to the spirit of exploration. We just want to remind everyone of that. Questioning and seeking answers are essential for personal and intellectual growth. And the Cosmobiology Institute strives to continue revealing that there's an intricate interconnectedness and a beautiful tapestry in which our individual lives are embedded. Never lose a holy curiosity. So thank you for joining us today. Let the research continue. If you are in the midst of a research topic or project, we're here to cheer you on. We're here to support. We're here to help you. If you haven't gotten started yet, I hope that maybe you're inspired or something has been sparked to do that. And we look forward to another event coming soon. So with that being said, before we forget anything, we want to wish everyone a beautiful holiday season. Thanks, everyone.
Michele, thank you very much. We did have some questions and some comments here, so I'd like to go through what's in the chat. And then if anybody would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. The icon is at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and I will unmute you. There's a request for clarification on in the vibrational charts, the pairs of planets that you were bringing up. Is it just pairs, or does it have to be with more than one planet, or a circuit, as Linda calls it?
Yes, it does not have to be a circuit. So this is one thing that tripped me up when I was initially doing the research, because I kept looking for all three planets being in a circuit, and I was literally about to tear my hair out because no, two. So either moon aspecting Pluto or moon aspecting Vesta.
Okay.
Just as an example.
Great. And then Nelson brought up an interesting point. Maybe you have some thoughts on this. He said, my wife is a nutritionist and works with eating disorders, and 46 is one of her strongest vibrations, with moon and Pluto is involved in a power grand trine, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So my thought on that would be this would show me like she's literally wired to work with this. And like I said before, it doesn't mean that, you know, she would have a propensity to this, but it certainly kind of shows me that she's going to have an understanding of it.
Absolutely. I think Santino has a few points to bring up, and then I believe Richard or Victoria would like, I think you're asking to be unmuted. Santino, go ahead, and then I'll revert to them.
Okay, great. I wanted to just add a few points, because Michele's presentation was so fabulous, but in 45 minutes or an hour or whatever, there's so much to discuss. But one thing I want to just emphasize is that this is exploratory research to try to build a model. We're not trying to confirm a belief that we already have. Now, why would we do exploratory research instead of test an idea? The reason is because we want to do what's commonly called KD today, knowledge discovery. We want to discover something we don't know. And to do that, we explore the data. This is what's done in machine learning, data mining, many different techniques. I just want to emphasize that. So we're trying to see, is there anything consistent in these charts at all? Anything that seems reasonable. So this is why the research takes so long. You're building from the ground up. And a lot of people will criticize the research and say, well, all you did is just find what's in the data. You didn't really prove anything. Exactly right. We're not proving anything. Because if we take our assumptions, they almost never work. So we explore, and then we would gather new data to confirm it. And the other thing I want to talk about is the p-values. Second point, there's 3 points I want to make. One is this is exploratory data for knowledge discovery. Second point is the p-value probability of the results was 0.0005 in the results. When we're doing exploratory research, we set a minimum value of 0.001 because all you're doing is building a model, and you need much better results than if you're testing a model. When you test a model, you want 0.01 or 0.05, but when you're building a model, you want much, much better results, because when you test with new data, it's not going to be as good as what you built. You're just building it. You're building a model that fits the data. You're not really, that's easy to do. So it has to be extremely good. Are you following me? Am I making any sense? So you
Yes.
often see that researchers use 0.01, but in exploratory research, we want it at least 10 times better than that, because you're exploring and building a model. Because typically when we test it, the results are 10 times worse. And if we go from 001 to 01, we're still good in the test. So I just want to mention that the cutoff point is much more difficult in exploratory research. And the third thing is, in building these models in a basic principle in knowledge discovery, is that your model should be relatively simple. If you have like 10 different unrelated things, like a parallel of declination, this is retrograde, and the ruler of the ascendant is here, and just like a jumble of different things, the model will probably not work when you test it. And so she's got 2 pairs, Moon Pluto, Moon Vesta in 23. She's got 2 pairs in 8, same exact vibrations. So it's simple. And a rule in knowledge discovery is you have to build a simple model. Simple meaning the formula is simple. Maybe not simple to understand, but you can't like use like 8 and 16 with Moon Pluto, but then skip 16 with Mercury Pluto. It's not a consistent, simple formula. So the formula has to be simple, the statistical significance has to be extremely high, and there needs to be some theoretical support for it. If you don't have all 3 of those, you're not getting very far. And in Michele's research, she achieved all 3, which means there's a good chance that when we test it with new data, you'll actually find something. So these are principles in knowledge discovery. Does that make sense? If not, you can, but I just wanted to clarify some of the, Michele was explaining how difficult it is to do this research. And these are some of the reasons why it's so difficult to build a beautiful, elegant, theoretically reasonable, and at 001, less than 1 in 1,000 probability is the criteria we use for exploratory research. For confirmatory research, you only need 0.05 or 0.01.
I also should probably add in this research that it was eating disorders of all kinds. So this was bulimia, it was anorexia, some people had both. I was hoping that as I conducted the research and watching the planetary configurations play out, that maybe those different varieties of eating disorders would kind of separate out in the research, but they actually did not. They didn't. So there was nothing that differentiated between anorexia and bulimia. While I was doing the research, I was fueled and driven even more. And actually in the middle of it, I talked about this at the conference, but I discovered that my niece had an eating disorder. And I think it was divine timing in order that, even this project took place, or this research took place, because as I stated earlier, I didn't choose it. And then, you know, a year into this research, it happens, and I was kind of able to help in the best way that I could with her. But I just wanted to clarify that they didn't separate at this point in time. Maybe that comes with the 31 vibe that I feel that may be involved, that, well, that showed as well. That's another layer that has not yet been uncovered. Maybe it'll show there.
Interesting. Richard or Victoria, I think you might have a question. If so, you can unmute your microphone and ask.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. Hey,
Hi.
Victoria. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I am taking a very definite turn to focus in on this kind of activity with the research projects or activities here, learning the difference between exploratory and the two different types. I know that I'm doing exploratory. I have the topic that I've been working on has been kind of in mundane astrology over time. I'm looking at the ending of the Pluto and Capricorn cycle, moving into the Pluto in Aquarius. I've done a couple speaking engagements on this, and that the time in between is liminal. It's like in between.
Right.
And it came to me in the experience I had of taking a train ride to Mayo Clinic as a small child and trying to walk between the cars across the gangway, connecting gangway, and how scary it was. You're walking over a moving parts, this gangway, and underneath you see the track going by underneath, or the train's going over the track, and so you see the movement of that. And you have to keep yourself steady. And that's described, that vision described the feeling that we have going on between Pluto moving out of Capricorn, stopping, retrograding, going back into Capricorn, and then out again into Aquarius, and then back again. And it did this, I think there's 5 station points here that we were dealing with. And I looked back on when Pluto was making this kind of progress into at other times when they going from one sign to another. Sometimes there were retrogrades involved, and sometimes there weren't. And I was looking for global events that indicated a shift in energy. So I was reading through that. And the first one I used was related really personally to my family when Pluto moved out of Gemini and went into Cancer in the early 1900s. It didn't go directly in and then keep going. It had some shifts back and forth. But during this time, theoretically, the quality of Gemini has to do with communication and ideas and development and technology. And it was a 1890s going into the early 1900s was an extraordinarily active technological development. And there was a lot of communication about it. And there was a lot of bragging about it.
Vicky, I think we're gonna need to like move on, because there's other questions and topics directly related to the
Sure.
Yeah, and I think, and I do want to mention too, any topics that you have that you need research guidance on, we are going to be working through those with people in different ways.
Yeah.
But if you
Well,
join,
anyway.
our research group meeting meets the 4th Tuesday of every month.
I'm joining that.
Okay, perfect. And we
So
can
anyway,
definitely look at that.
So
Interesting.
I thank you for this. You are correct. I am still refining my focus and developing my questions to be more specific.
Yeah, it sounds
That's great.
fascinating.
Vincent, did you have something you wanted to say?
Mhm.
You're still muted? You're muted, Vincent. You're still muted. Well, we can come back to Vincent in a minute. There's something,
Yep.
while you're figuring that out, there's something I wanted to add in response to what Nelson said, that his wife, I'm reading it here. My wife is a nutritionist and works with eating disorders. 46 is one of her strongest vibes, exactly one of the vibes in Michelle's research. Moon, Pluto are involved in a power grand trine. So this is an amazing coincidence that she works with eating disorders. She doesn't have an eating disorder, but she's a nutritionist. Could it be that sometimes this configuration is not that you have it, but that you're involved with it in some way? What I find interesting is that is exactly what our theory was.
Mm.
When Michelle found this 23 sequence, I remember Michelle in one of our meetings, I don't know if you remember this, we were talking about how an interesting thing about eating disorders is the strategy. Like if I have, stress, or you have stress, or, trauma from childhood, or you were abused or whatever, they choose to have an eating disorder. You can choose many things. You could have crying fits. I mean, many, but the strategy is quite interesting. And we think that 23 is involved because the person's come up with an interesting way to deal with it. This is what always happens with 23. People develop an interesting decision, a gamble, their own way. And so the 23 involved with the Moon, Pluto, and Moon Vesta is about, I have an interesting gamble, an interesting approach to dealing with my trauma. My Moon, Pluto, and my Moon Vesta, my pickiness, my perfectionism, etc. And doesn't mean that you have it. It means that you have an interesting way of dealing with it. We all have Moon, Pluto somewhere. It's not
Right.
like they're super Moon, Pluto people. It's that their Moon, Pluto happens to be 23. Everybody has in some harmonic. And so that Nelson's wife is dealing specifically with strategies for how to deal with this.
Mhm.
She's a nutritionist dealing with these disorders, which is actually closer to what we were thinking when we came up with the idea. So, in applying the ideas, we get some feedback and ideas, and it refines our understanding. But one idea I'm getting from what Nelson shared is it's reinforcing our sense that what's going on with the bulimia and anorexia is partly just their interesting way of dealing with the trauma. And
And he mentioned too, just a second ago, that Sun, Mars, and Neptune are also involved,
wow,
which is interesting. And
yeah,
it's really that Pluto that
Mhm.
just makes you can't shake something. Like it's there. It's in your
you
head.
can't shake it. I would suspect because his wife is doing this work, and if this theory that Michelle came up with is, if it's true, we don't know. She's just building the model. But if it's true, it would suggest that Nelson's wife must be one extraordinary therapist because she was made for this. She's
Very
got,
involved.
when we see someone express what's in the chart, we're elated. We're like, this is the best thing ever because the person is doing their superpower. And when you do
Right.
your superpower, you get really good at it. So I'm suspecting that, if I had a family member who's having
He
these
just
problems, like
he
Michelle,
just said
well,
he's
get a hold of Nelson and see if I get his way. Because
well. He just
she's
said
got-
that she's a researcher and university teacher on it. So yes, doing her superpower for
she's
sure.
doing her superpower. She's, she's going to a prestigious level, probably because she's so darn good and motivated about it.
Yeah.
So this is the excitement of taking, in the American Psychological Association, the other websites, they emphasize in an evidence-based practice, there's two prongs to this thing. There's you do the research, it's like you're in the laboratory collecting data, then you apply it. And when you apply it, things start to come clearer. It becomes alive. And so we're seeing what happens with Nelson's wife, and it's starting to become more alive. Now, let me also say, we're at such an early stage. We're only doing the exploratory research. We haven't collected new data, the confirmatory research yet. So as very strict evidence-based people, we still don't have huge confidence, but we have some confidence. More than seeing 20 clients or 100 clients, something that's organized and systematic and really confirmed with data. So I just love when we start applying the ideas and then it makes sense and all fits together.
Let's try to go to Vincent. I think he got his mic
Yeah,
unmuted, and then Linda, we'll go to you
Thank
afterwards.
You unmuted me. Thank you. Do you hear me, Michele?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see. Oh,
Yes, she can hear you.
She's okay. You hear
I'm
me?
here.
Oh, thank you. First, thank you for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
There's something I'd like to clarify because I think I didn't understand correctly. At one moment you said, okay, you found the factors for the signature.
Yes.
Then you said that you made a linear regression. You remember you spoke about that, but you didn't explain. But my question is, how did you find your weights, the weights or the coefficient of your regression? Can you explain a little?
I actually just assigned a weight of 10, and the weight of 10 was assigned for how tight the orb was between those two
Okay,
planets.
that's what I understood. So, but you didn't have only 10. 10 was the maximum for a very tight orb. Is that it?
No, I could have put 20, 30, 40, whatever.
Yeah, but did you put 10 for all the factors or okay, you have the answer?
Yeah, I have the answer.
Okay.
I think I do anyway. We'll see. I might be derailing it. Is when we're using a regression model, but when we build the model, we usually, not always, but we usually don't assign different weights.
Oh, so
the reason we don't assign different weights is we are trying to avoid overfitting.
Sure.
So we want to see, can we build a model that's simple and not even weight it, which is nearly impossible.
So it's not really regression. It's only 0, 1. It's yes or no.
It's really not a regression in that sense. It's a regression in theory because we do believe we need to weight them, but we don't weight them just to show how good the formula is, even without weighting them.
But do you agree that if all the weights are equal, either you put 1 or 10 or 100, it's all equivalent? Because they're all equal. I mean, it's only 0, 1. It's binary.
Right.
Okay. Maybe, Michele, can I just suggest
But
something?
Vincent, let me just say, the only reason we do that to make the model bad, so that if we get 001 significance with a bad model, we have more confidence.
I agree.
In future research, we will weight them.
Yeah.
Like we suspect the Moon Vesta is stronger than Moon Pluto in 23, and we should weight it more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But we just didn't weight it in order to be, you might say, modest and not to be criticized for overfitting.
There's other reasons also, because you cannot assign weights only from subjective point of view. It wouldn't be a regression model. So I agree with that. I think that the best thing to do when you don't have any idea, it's to put 0, 1 or 0, 10.
Yeah.
But now, Michele, are you back? I want to.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, that would be. I don't see you. How come? Anyway,
I think you might have to scroll over on your screen.
Oh yeah, Michele, that would be very nice if you could now take your model and find weights by a statistical procedure. It's not so complicated, but probably Santino could help you with that.
Okay.
That'd be nice because it's going to be stronger if you have different weights, but you don't decide yourself which are the weights. The data will tell you. it's very fun.
I agree.
Try this.
We can run a regression analysis. It'll give us the
Yeah,
weights,
yeah,
and then the p-value will go even extremely
Yeah.
better. Yeah, it's a good
but
idea.
this is, I agree that it could be a pitfall, kind of illusion to get a very, very good p-value with this procedure. But you know, the final test is, this was my second question. Have you got, Michele, data for replication of your model? That's the final test.
Yes, I have not replicated it at this
But do
point in
you
time.
have the
No,
data? Do you have the data available for, you know how to
Yes.
find it? Oh, wow, that's cool.
No,
You
I don't.
don't? Oh, you don't yet?
no.
That's- Okay, that's very important. Now you're, when you got that, you're done. I mean,
Right.
you got the
Right.
truth. Yeah.
I
Right.
agree 100%,
And
Vincent.
that 31.5, right?
That's
But
part
it's-
of why we need all of you to join us on our research, so we have more people to help do all of these great
I think
studies.
it's not so hard to find maybe another 74 or 100. I don't know how I would do it, but it's possible, I think. Yeah.
I'm
Good luck.
gonna go to Linda real quick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.
Okay, Michele, I wanted to ask, do you include things like low blood sugar and the eating patterns connected with that in your eating disorders?
That was not included. This was strictly out of those 74, they were anorexic or bulimic only.
Okay.
But I am curious about that, Linda, like if that plays a factor somewhere in there too. If that's separate research that's done on diabetes or low blood sugar or high blood sugar, whatever that is, I'm curious with that, if 8 and 23 show up there too with the same planetary patterns.
Well, I had it does show up in 23 for me with Vesta, Pluto, and what was the other planet?
Moon.
It was Moon
Moon,
Pluto
yeah,
or Moon
yeah.
Vesta. Mhm.
Yeah, moon. I have a moon sextile. Well, actually, moon sextile Pluto. The Vesta is trine Mars. The Vesta and widely conjunct Pluto, but the Vesta is not on the moon.
It's not on the moon. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is on the moon in the research.
right. I understand. But no, I had a serious problem with having to be, if I didn't eat carefully, I crashed for many, many years. And then I had an extremely radical resolution of it, which if you want me to tell you about it, I'll be glad to later, but.
Cool.
Or
I'm
I
glad
can
you-
do it now if people want me to take the time, but it takes a minute or two to explain.
Michele, thank you, Linda. Starlene also mentioned that diabetes would be a great project as well.
Yeah.
We have a question about, were you just, I believe you were just working with conjunctions on this research. Were there any other aspects that you were working with?
For the eating disorders,
Yes. Mhm.
I was not just working on conjunctions.
Oh,
They
okay.
were just like aspects. I did not find that they were just all hard aspects or all soft aspects.
Yeah.
But they were
So-
definitely there.
Which other aspects were you working with? All like
I worked all of
trine,
them,
squares.
whatever showed up,
Okay.
time,
The
right.
major aspects. Okay.
the major aspects. The conjunctions, that was solely for the Black Moon Lilith research.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. All right. Does anybody have anything else? I think we got through all of them. So when you sign out, when you leave the presentation, there's a quick survey at the end, and the survey has a place for questions. If you could please, if you have any additional questions, please type them in there so we can get back with you. I know we have a lot of people on the chat who are not native English speakers or in the meeting and who will be listening to the recording. So we would really like to answer any questions that you have as well, but we need a little bit of time to translate and get back to you on those. Another thing I'm going to mention again is that the fourth Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern is our research group meeting. We've gotten to a point now where we're ready to choose a topic and really start researching and developing that more. We do need everybody, we would love everybody's help on these endeavors. It does not matter what your level of participation is. If you feel good, if you feel better just listening, observing, and learning, that's totally fine. We're here for all different types of people who are interested in this research. So please feel free to join. Again, when you leave the meeting today and you get that survey that comes up, there is a question of, would you like more information on the research meeting? So we can include you on that list to get the login information and so on. You can also email us at info@cosmobiology.org, and we will be able to help you with that as well. Sorry, I think it's info@cosmobiologyinstitute.org for the email. So we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and if you would like to donate even $5 or $10 to help with operational costs, we would be greatly appreciative. There is an option in the survey for you to select that you would like a link sent for donations. And you are all invited back in February, will be our next guest presentation. We'll send more information on that to come. So thank you, Michele, especially for your work, and thank you everybody for being here. Have a fantastic holiday season for those of you who celebrate, and a wonderful new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.